隣の海藻は青く見えるさ
陸に行くのは大きな間違い周りを見てごらんこの海の底
Today's objectives are to work with amides. It's a new functional group, and we're going to identify, name, and draw amides. And we're also going to recognize and predict products for the reactions that amides undergo.
Alright, so let's take a look at what exactly an amide is and what it looks like. First of all, the general formula. Like most of the previous groups, an amide is a double bonded oxygen coming off of a carbon. The difference is, for the first time, you're going to see a functional group that has a nitrogen. So on the same carbon that has the double bonded O, you're going to see a nitrogen. Coming off the double bonded oxygen carbon, there's always going to be some carbon chain. And nitrogens, which can have 3 bonds to them, the nitrogen could have a carbon chain, so another R group, but it could also be a hydrogen, still technically an amide. The third bond of the nitrogen could be a third carbon chain, but it could also be a hydrogen, and it would still technically classify as an amide.
Let's go over some naming rules for the amides. Identify the correct carbon chain prefixes for each of the separate carbon chains coming off the nitrogen. So here's a bute, here's an eth, and here's a meth. The second thing that we need to do is the carbon chain under the double bonded O is the parent chain and gets the amide. So all of the carbon chains are connected to the nitrogen, but this is the only carbon that is connected to the double bonded O and the nitrogen, so it is going to get the amide ending. So in this case we have ethanamide. One of the biggest fallacies that happen in this functional group is people want to name the longest carbon chain, but please note it's the one that is connected to the nitrogen and the double bonded O. The remaining chains get an N as a prefix and a YL as a suffix. The YL is nothing new, but the N is new. And we are going to also put these alphabetically. So we have N-butyl, because B is our first letter out of our chains within the alphabet. And then we have an N-methyl. However, in this case, we still have something coming off the butyl chain. So we got to throw that out front. So there's a methyl group that's going to go out front. So it is 3-methyl, N-butyl, N-methyl, ethanamide.
Here's your next example. This amide looks a little bit different. If we start off in identifying the correct carbon prefixes for the carbon chains, we have a 4 carbon chain over here, so that's bute, and a 1 carbon chain here, so that's a meth. Notice in this example there's only 2 carbon chains, where in the last example there were 3. That's a little bit confusing maybe, but remember this N, this could also just have hydrogens coming off. So instead of 3 carbon chains we have 2, and this hydrogen takes up one of those spots. You don't have to worry about the hydrogen, you don't have to name it, you just have to name the carbon chains that are there. The parent chain is the bute, since that's where the double bonded oxygen is attached, so we name this molecule with the backbone butanamide. The remaining chains get N as a prefix and YL as a suffix, so N-methyl gets listed out in front. There's no other attached groups to deal with, so you don't need to number this. The final version is simply N-methyl butanamide.
Alright, here's another one, except this one is extremely easy because we have 2 hydrogens coming off the nitrogen, so the only thing that we have to do is name the chain with the amide ending, or how Mr. Johnson says it, amide, which is wrong. Just kidding, it's like tomato, tomato, it could be either way, but in this case we have pent for the 5 carbons, and then we just add the amide at the end, so this is just pentanamide.
And finally, here's your most complicated amide that you're going to see today. Starts off the same way. Identify all the carbon chains you have. There's a bute over here, there's a hex over here, and a pent down here. The double bonded oxygen, it gives us the backbone, so the backbone is butanamide. The remaining chains get listed alphabetically with N's and YL. So there's an N-hexyl and an N-pentyl. We would be done, except there's attached groups happening in this molecule, a chloro and a bromo. You have to account for them too. So to do that, we've got to number the chains. You number starting at the nitrogen. Don't number the nitrogen. You start at the carbon next to the nitrogen, and you number out from there, as shown. That means you have the chloro on carbon 3 of the bute, and the bromo on carbon 2 of the hex. The only issue is, where do you put them? This is really important. We haven't seen something like this yet, so pay attention to where they go. The attached group has to get listed before whatever it's attached to. So for the chloro, it's attached to the bute. That means in the name, it has to get listed before the bute portion of the name. So we make some room there, put the 3-chloro in front of the butanamide, since that's what it's coming off of. Same thing with the bromo. It's attached to the hex part of the chain, so the 2-bromo should get listed in front of the N-hexyl portion, making the final name 2-bromo N-hexyl N-pentyl 3-chloro butanamide.
Let's take a look at some amide formation or reactions. Amides can be formed by the dehydration of a carboxylic acid with a carbon chain containing an NH2 group called an amine. So down here we have a carboxylic acid and we have an amine there. What's going to happen are the H from the amine and the OH group from the carboxylic acid are going to get dehydrated out, producing a water, which brings the two molecules together. So water is leaving, which is what is being shown there, and now the two reactants are being brought together, forming an amide.
Alright, for our next reaction, we have the reduction of an amide. If you react amide in the presence of a reducing agent, you get a new molecule called an amine, which we haven't talked about yet, but we will soon. So if you see an amide and it reacts with a reducing agent right here, this oxygen, the double bonded oxygen, is actually removed and attaches and becomes part of the reducing agent. Now you don't have to draw that or explain that. What you have to draw is the product, which is simply the same molecule, but essentially the double bonded oxygen is removed, leaving behind just the NH2. So when there's just an NH2 on a molecule, that's what we refer to as an amine.
Let's go over some common amides. Amides are well known for their structural rigidity, which makes them useful in many applications. Here we have Kevlar, and they're made up of many amides. These bonds that hold the amide together are very, very strong. There is the amide right there. And Kevlar, of course, is best known for bulletproof vests. It will stop a bullet from hurting your vital organs. Just make sure if a bullet is coming north of the vest that you duck, because it does not extend any far north than your shoulders.
Your body also produces molecules that use amides to make long strands, much like humans can produce Kevlar for use in bulletproof vests. Your body produces these long strands called proteins. And just like in Kevlar, the bond that holds the protein together is a peptide bond. You might remember hearing that back in your biology class. Really, a peptide bond is just a fancy name for an amide that kind of holds the pieces of the protein together.
Today we went over how to identify, name, and draw amides, and we also looked at many reactions that amides undergo. Just remember, when we're naming an amide, we're focusing on the carbon that has the double bonded O and is also attached to the nitrogen. It doesn't matter the length, and we're going to give it the amide ending. If you guys have any questions, please bring them to class.